In every war, civilians are sadly killed, true. But targeting civilians on purpose is, you'll agree, particularly evil. We can all agree on that. And then we've got the actions of the so-called most moral army in the world, the Israeli Defense Force, with 10,000 children murdered so far and 70% civilian kill ratio. It's got to be the sickest joke in world military. Even Hamas has a better civilian death ratio, and the world calls them terrorists. Did you know the IDF have caused more death and destruction than Russia did in either Aleppo or Mariupol? The European Minister of Foreign Affairs said proportionately more of Gaza has been destroyed compared to Germany in the Second World War. Because the IDF don't just target civilians as an official tactic, there's documented evidence, as I'm about to show you, an awful example of how they're in the habit of, well, what else is this? Thrill-seeking in the way they go about killing victims in sickeningly inventive ways which only deepens the tragedy. It's a whole new level of savagery. A lot of folk simply can't process because people can't imagine a modern military behaving like this. On top, there's the well-oiled Western propaganda that covers Israel's back. So recently we had the example of the killing of Al Jazeera journalist Samir Abu Daqqa. According to Al Jazeera, quote, following Samir's injury, he was left to bleed to death for over 5 hours as Israeli forces prevented ambulances and rescue workers from reaching him, denying him the much-needed emergency treatment. For those of you who know, this is a familiar Israeli military ploy. He might have survived, Allahu Alam, but he was intentionally made to bleed to death, and all help was prevented him. And as sickening as that is, targeting civilians, journalists, now 100 killed. The Press Freedom Group Committee to Protect Journalists said, quote, the conflict in Gaza is the deadliest for journalists it has ever recorded. The only democracy in the Middle East, my foot. You'll be surprised to learn, or by now perhaps not, the IDF can actually get even more sicker than this. So, as you might have heard, it made a lot of noise how 2 Catholic women of Gaza sheltering, get this, in a church with some 300 odd Christians. One of them needed the bathroom within the vicinity. Here is the niece and sister of the 2 victims telling us what happened.
خالي كانت رايحة على الحمام وقنص القناص ببطنه. لما وقعت بالأرض وصارت تستنسجد حاولوا الموجودين مع أولادها أحفادها خالي الناس الموجودين معي مساعدتها. ركض أول شخص قنصوا عليه.
So the aunt was first shot in the belly. Why belly? Hold the thought.
للأسف بنت خالي سمر بدها تساعد أمها. تخيلوا حالكم أنتم محطوطين بهيك موقف. اللي صار إنه بنت خالي ركضت لتساعد أمها. ما كانت رايحة مع الحمام.
Seeing her mother shot in the stomach and calling out in agony, naturally the daughter ran out to help her. A human response. We'd all react like this.
ردت لتساعد امها القناص قوصها براسها يعني القناص الاسرائيلي الغاشم الحقود.
The daughter running over to help her mother is then mercilessly shot in the head by the same sniper.
كان واقف ناطرين كل واحد يطلع يعنصه ويقوس عليه ويقتله بدم بارد. ما كانوا ماشيين مع بعض وتقنصوا بالغلط. لا بنت خالي ميتة حد امها. خالي ولاد خالي واحفادي ونسوان ولاد خالي والموجودين هناك كانوا رجعوا ركضوا لانه موقف الله لا يحط حدا فيه. رجعوا ركضوا ليساعدوا سمر الشهيدة بطلة سمر ويساعدوا الشهيدة مرت خالي لأنها كانت بعدها عايشة مرت خالي. ضربوا عليهم قذيفة. ما اكتفوا بالتقنيص ضربوا عليهم قذيفة. اللي تجرح منهم واللي تأذى منهم وتراجعوا. ضلت مرت خالي تنزف حتى الموت. ما قدروا يساعدوها. هاي الحقيقة مش عم بيقولوا بالغلط. اللي عم بيدافعوا عن إسرائيل بابا روما فاتيكان اللي عم بيدافعوا عن إسرائيل ما تقولوا بالغلط. الحقيقة انه كل انسان عم بيتحرك بغزة كل إنسان عم بيتحرك بفلسطين عم بيقتلوه، مش عم بينطروا يعرفوا هذا مقاوم، هذا إنسان بريء، هذا إنسان مدني.
I want you to process that for a second. What just happened? I think we know, but we don't want to admit human beings like us are capable of such barbarism. It makes us question our own humanity. But with 20,000 plus victims already, we owe it to hold this moral army of saints to account. Not just them, but their enablers too, the cowardly, greedy Western politicians and media who've put money and career before principles. So let's break it down. First of all, snipers are trained to shoot from great distance with incredible accuracy. That's the whole point of a sniper. You can be assured, when they shoot a stomach, they aimed for the stomach. When they shoot a head, that was their intention. That Israeli sniper shot the First Lady, the mother, intentionally in the belly. No question. Not to kill her, because belly shots don't instantly kill. He wanted to incapacitate her.
ضلت مرت خالي عايشة بس ضلت عم تنزف بأرضها.
Once he'd fixed the trap, he has the first victim call out the second victim, and he waits for the rescue to arrive.
كان القناص واقف وناطر كل واحد عم يطلع وعم يقنص عليه. الموضوع ما كان بالغلط أبدا.
With his second victim, he goes in for the kill, a straight shot to the head. So the belly shot was the bait for his second kill. His objective all along was to kill more than one person. This is the level of moral degeneracy we're dealing with here, by the most moral army in the world. No respect for the dignity of life. Those were two human beings. The 20,000 innocent people were also real human beings, with as much right to life and dignity as an Israeli. But all of them treated like animals. The life of these women taken in a sick game. These aren't just war crimes, it's pure evil. Now, if Israel is able to do this to Catholics in a church, how do you imagine they're treating Muslims? And if they can do it once, what's to prevent them from doing it 100 times when there aren't witnesses? In fact, there's a report lodged at the UN that on December the 13th, 13 bodies were found piled up inside a UN-run school in Shadia Abu Ghazala school west of Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza, where, quote, witnesses said several people, including women, children and babies, were killed execution style by Israeli forces, end quote. A father of one of the victims said, quote, they entered the classroom. We were in and fired directly at those present. Saeed Juma's sister, her husband and children were among those executed. Quote, Israeli forces killed them by firing at them point blank. Their bodies were swollen and filled with worms. He continued, Israeli soldiers had, quote, written something in Hebrew on his nephew's face. They'd written a message in Hebrew on his nephew's face, his dead nephew's face. A kid. So they first shot him in cold blood, and then they scribbled on his face like it was some object or something. What sort of animals are these? Now, these are just the few cases that have been reported in all the chaos of war, where all civil order has collapsed. And unlike the Catholic women and the 3 Israeli hostages, it has barely made the news, even though it's a lot more egregious than any of the tragic events of late. It just shows Palestinian Muslim life is far less valuable than even Palestinian Catholic life, and almost certainly Israeli life. The only positive, if it is a positive, although it doesn't feel like it, that has come out of all this, is that we can finally stop pretending that human rights and the rule of law is actually a real thing in the world. Rather, it's a big joke, wielded by those in power, the West in particular, to serve their own interests. Human rights and freedom only when it suits their agenda. When it doesn't, to hell with it. And the Palestinians have the tragic honor of debunking this great lie for the world with their blood.